So yes, that happened 41 years ago. Casa Ann Reese came into the world bright and early around 4 a.m. on the 10th. You know, she wasn't supposed to be called Casa Ann. No. A few weeks before Bonnie was due, we had decided the name, if it was a girl, it was going to be Cassie, Cassie. And when people would ask us about the name, we would say Cassie, and they would say, oh, Kathy. And we went, no, Cassie. So we wanted something unique, so we went back to the drawing board. And after a little while, we came up with the name Kassa. Casa doesn't mean anything that we knew about. It wasn't short for Cassandra or anything. It was just a name that no one else had. So now back to April 9th, 1981. Um, I was in sales training. I was working as an engineer at a big company and transferring into sales, and was going through a 13-week sales training program. So my schedule was kind of screwed up. I had a good friend of mine that was standing by, that if I was ever doing something, he would get Bonnie to the hospital. So on April 9th, I came home from the sales training like at 3 or 4. We got done early, and Bonnie was cleaning. The old wives' tale about pregnant ladies clean right before they go into labor to make sure when they come home from the hospital they have a nice clean house. Who knew that was true, or if it even was true? Anyway, I came home after work, 3 or 4. Was supposed to go out to dinner that night. We went out to a dinner lot as a group. It was supposed to be a good bonding time, and Bonnie and I talked about it, and I said, I can stay home. And she goes, no, go have fun. She goes, I don't have contractions. It's 10 days before the baby's due. We're fine. So I left, and I went to dinner. And sometime during the dinner, one of the other guys asked me, he said, isn't your wife expecting? And I go, yes, she is. And they go, well, when is she going to have the baby? And I said, probably today, tonight, tomorrow morning, laughingly. And anyway, then I got home about 8:30, and Bonnie wasn't cleaning anymore. She was just sitting there. A little discomfort, not having contractions, but not feeling all that good. So we talked about going to the hospital, and finally decided, no, let's just go to bed. So we went to bed, and after laying in bed for less than an hour, I think, she was tossing and turning, couldn't get any sleep, and we finally agreed, let's just go to the hospital. It's only 6 miles away. We'll get there. They'll tell us you're not in labor. We can come home and get some sleep, and we can go from there. So we got up, got dressed, grabbed the bag and everything, went to the hospital. I dropped her off at ER. I went to go park, figured when I came back she'd be standing out at the front door, but when I came back she wasn't there. I asked where she was, and they said they took her up to maternity. So I go up to wherever that was and ask the nurse, and they go, she's in this room. So I go in the room, and the nurse is talking to her, and her water broke. So it seemed real. But then the nurse said, we have a problem. The little one is breech. In this particular case, that meant she was coming out butt first, which a lot of butt first born babies come through natural childbirth and are okay. So they sat us down and they talked to us, and they said there's no major problems with having a breech baby with natural childbirth instead of a cesarean. However, some studies show that a child that was born breech may be a little bit slower to develop, and but they usually catch up by the time they're 6 or 7. And the nurse left us alone, and we talked about it, and well, we came to the conclusion a cesarean was better. Now, when we were going through childbirth classes, the night they did cesarean birth, I had to go to Minnesota, where I was being transferred to be a sales engineer, so I missed that. So I knew nothing about cesarean birth other than it's an operation. So as they come in to get her ready, I'd talked to Bonnie about it, and I said, I can't go in the operating room. I don't have the stomach. I don't think I could make it through it. So I left and went out in the waiting room. And I'm sitting in the waiting room. I'm the only one there. It's like 2 in the morning now, maybe 3, somewhere in there. And I finally went, I can do this. So I went and found the nurse and said, no, I want to go in the delivery room with my wife, even though she's doing a cesarean. And they put me in scrubs and all kinds of good stuff, and I went in there, and I remember when I walked in, they'd already given her epidural, and she was laying on the bed completely naked, just happy and waving her arms and having a good old time. So my job was to sit next to her head on a stool, and I had a rag with some chips of ice in it. So when she was thirsty, I could give it to her and she could, suck on it, munch on it. And then I was also holding a stainless steel pan, so after she did that, she would always want to throw up, so I had to hold that and let her puke into it. So my job was to keep her hydrated and keep cleaning up the mess. And when the operation got close, they put like a board right underneath her breasts that goes up, so sitting there, she or I couldn't see the operation. What they didn't know is up in the ceiling on the light that wasn't that bright, you could see the reflection. So I sneaked a peek every once in a while and then decided I probably wouldn't do that. So I went back to concentrating on making sure it was okay. And all of a sudden, baby cries, and their doctor who had come in, between the nurse talking to us, and when he could get there, he goes, "Well, that's not bad for somebody who just woke up." Doctors have such a good sense of humor. So they took the baby off to the side and to clean her up. And they were, of course, putting Bonnie back together. And they came over to me, and Casa was all wrapped up in the blanket. And they said, "She's a little blue. We want to take her, put her in an incubator for a few hours, and we would like you to carry her." So I'd been sitting there with my feet in the stool in the bottom and trying to get my feet out. I stumbled a little bit, and they thought I wasn't going to make it or something. But I made it. I got up and I grabbed her, and off to the incubator we went. And by then they had Bonnie in post-op, probably back to her room. She was out. They put her to sleep so she could recuperate. They told me to go home. So I went and made some phone calls to let everybody know it happened, that that little one had just come into the world. Happy birthday, Munchkin.